2,300 hours. The Baltic Sea was covered in darkness, and 6 Russian oil tankers moved through the black water with their AIS signals turned off. To their crews, it looked as if they had disappeared from the map. But they had not disappeared at all. From the moment they left port, their route, speed, and every small change in direction had already been captured by Finland's coastal sonar and surveillance network. Out in the darkness, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer quietly changed course. Its advanced tracking systems settled on the convoy without a single warning broadcast. Then the night was split by flares and signal lights, cutting through the mist like a final warning. 2,000 feet above the sea, a P-8A Poseidon swept over the area at high speed. Its sensors had been following the convoy for hours, collecting every signal, every movement, and every shift in formation. This was not luck. The tankers had entered a zone they could not see, but one that NATO had already mapped in detail. The Russian crews believed they were moving unseen. In reality, they were stepping deeper into a carefully prepared net. And within moments, the sailors on those vessels were close to making one of the most serious miscalculations of their careers. As the so-called Ghost Fleet realized its cover had been stripped away, Moscow shifted to the next phase of the plan. In the middle of the gray zone, where confusion matters as much as force, Russian teams moved against a civilian fishing vessel and claimed it had crossed into restricted waters. Seconds later, Russian transmitters filled international emergency channels with a dramatic Mayday call. The goal was simple: take control of the story before anyone else could explain what was really happening. They wanted the world to believe NATO had provoked the confrontation, but the alliance did not answer with speeches. It answered with coordination. From the west, 2 Swedish Visby-class corvettes cut across the Baltic at nearly 37 knots. These were not ordinary warships. Built from advanced composite materials and shaped with sharp radar-reducing angles, they were designed to appear as little more than a whisper on enemy sensors. Driven by powerful gas turbines and moving with remarkable precision, the Visbys closed the distance in near-total electronic silence. Their Bofors systems were connected to advanced tracking equipment, while their RBS-15 systems remained hidden behind stealth panels, ready if the situation escalated further. At the same time, the Finnish Navy activated a fast maritime screen. Using live information from its coastal network, Finnish patrol craft accelerated toward the seized fishing vessel. They brought more than speed, they brought electronic pressure. Navigation and radar interference filled the area, turning Russian bridge screens into confusion and static. What had looked like a controlled operation for Moscow suddenly became a maze with no clear exit. High above the scene, the P-8A Poseidon became the brain of the operation. Its magnetic anomaly detection equipment and advanced acoustic sensors mapped the underwater environment, while its crew fed precise data to the American destroyer. The Arleigh Burke surged into position, powered by its massive gas turbines. Its Aegis combat system moved into a heightened state, tracking several contacts at once while the crew prepared for a fast intercept. The trap had now fully closed. The Russian convoy had entered the Baltic believing it could control the situation. Instead, it found itself surrounded by Swedish stealth, Finnish local intelligence, and American naval power. The balance had changed in seconds. Every move was now being watched, recorded, and answered. For veterans and patriots who remember the Cold War at its most tense, Moscow's playbook may look familiar. But this time, it was facing a digital shield far more advanced than anything from the last century. When you see the power of an Arleigh Burke destroyer working alongside the quiet precision of a Visby-class corvette, do you think Russia is making a dangerous mistake by using old intimidation tactics against modern network technology? Share your thoughts in the comments, especially if you remember how these standoffs felt in earlier decades. Inside the dim bridge of the lead Russian tanker, the operation was turning into a staged performance. Moscow's operatives pushed out a dramatic emergency broadcast across civilian frequencies, trying to shape the world's first impression of the event. On the fishing vessel, Russian boarding teams began what they wanted to look like a rescue. But the situation on deck told a different story. The crew was under clear pressure, and the captain was being forced to repeat a prepared statement accusing NATO of espionage. At NATO headquarters, experienced officers recognized the tactic immediately. It was an old method: create a crisis, control the cameras, and accuse the other side before the truth can catch up. But there was one serious flaw in the plan. They forgot about the aircraft watching from above. 20,000 feet over the Baltic, the P-8A Poseidon held steady in the cold night air. Its CFM56-7B engines kept the aircraft stable as its onboard systems processed the scene below with incredible clarity. The aircraft's electro-optical sensor turret turned toward the fishing vessel. From an altitude where the human eye would see almost nothing, the camera zoomed in with sharp detail. As Russian state media prepared to release shaky footage of a supposed NATO provocation, NATO command was already watching a clean, high-resolution live feed. They could see identifying marks on the Russian uniforms. They could see the crew's body language. They could see the timeline clearly enough to prove that the pressure on the fishing vessel began before the emergency signal was ever sent. This was the new front line of information warfare. Not slogans, not shouting, not edited clips, just clear evidence captured in real time. Every attempt to twist the story was being challenged before it could spread. In the Baltic that night, influence did not belong to the side with the loudest broadcast. It belonged to the side holding the clearest data. Once the truth was recorded, the USS Arleigh Burke moved to make sure the false story could not travel unchallenged. Deep inside the destroyer, 4 General Electric LM-2500 gas turbines pushed the 9,000-ton ship through the waves, carving a fast white path across the sea. But the most important move was not visible. The commander authorized the use of the AN/SLQ-32 V6 electronic warfare suite. A focused wall of electromagnetic interference expanded around the Russian tankers. Satellite links, long-range radios, and unsecured communication channels began to fail. For the Russian crews, it felt as though the outside world had suddenly disappeared. Their attempt to send dramatic footage back to Moscow collapsed into blank screens and broken signals. This was complete digital isolation. They could not call for support. They could not easily share their version of events. They were stuck inside a communications void created by the very operation they had launched. While the Russian crews tried to understand the sudden blackout, the Phantom of the Baltic moved in. A Swedish Visby-class corvette, low, angular, and almost silent, glided toward the fishing vessel. Its water-jet propulsion and reduced vibration signature allowed it to approach with stunning quiet. On Russian radar, it barely existed. The Russian teams on deck kept watching for the larger American destroyer. They never noticed the Swedish ship until it was already dangerously close. At roughly 100 yards, the Visby revealed its Bofors Mark III system from its stealth housing. The Russian personnel looked up and saw a sleek, modern warship positioned exactly where they had not expected one to be. Their sensors had failed them, their communications had failed them, and now a ship they had not even detected was sitting beside them with complete control of the situation. On the bridge of the lead Russian tanker, the air was tense. The captain stared at his radar screen, but it showed almost nothing useful. NATO's electronic pressure had turned his advanced equipment into a field of confusion. Then a massive dark shape appeared through the mist at a sharp angle. The Arleigh Burke was not slowing down. On the NATO tactical network, the countdown reached 90 seconds. The Russian crew could feel the vibration of the American turbines through the deck beneath their boots. This had become a 9,000-ton test of nerve, and the American commander was forcing the convoy to decide whether it truly wanted to keep pushing forward. But the most powerful pressure came from below. The P-8A Poseidon continued its orbit overhead. Its crew deployed a multi-static acoustic field designed to suggest the possible presence of advanced undersea assets in the area. To Russian sonar operators, the signals were impossible to ignore. They heard patterns that resembled the signatures of high-performance submarine movement beneath the surface. The psychological effect was immediate. It was no longer only a destroyer closing from the surface. The Russian crews now had to consider the possibility that unseen undersea platforms were also nearby, positioned beneath their routes and ready to respond if the situation went further. At the 45-second mark, the Arleigh Burke used its long-range acoustic device. A focused sound beam struck across the water and reached the Russian bridge with unmistakable force. The message was delivered in both English and Russian. Russian fleet, your formation is creating a hazard to navigation. Disperse immediately or prepare for boarding under international emergency procedures. The pressure finally became too much. The captain of the lead tanker, facing the prospect of being boxed in by a modern destroyer and shadowed from below, ordered full reverse. The engines coughed out a heavy cloud of smoke as the huge ship strained against its own momentum. The Russian formation broke apart. Each tanker began an uncoordinated turn to port, their hulls leaning as they tried to avoid the American bow. The image of control vanished in an instant. What had been meant to look like a bold show of strength turned into a rushed attempt to escape the closing net. On the fishing vessel, the Russian boarding teams understood what had happened. Their communications were blocked. Their staged narrative had been recorded from the sky. Their escape route was now covered by a Swedish corvette they had not even seen until it was already in position. The Visby moved between the fleeing tankers and the fishing vessel like a shield. Its tracking systems remained locked on the Russian positions, making the message impossible to misunderstand. The operation was over. With their story exposed and their movement blocked, the boarding teams abandoned the vessel. NATO forces secured the fishing boat shortly afterward, and the crew was brought out of the crisis safely. This moment changed the balance in the Baltic. NATO did not simply protect one fishing vessel. It demonstrated that gray zone tactics lose much of their power when they face an integrated, network defense system. The Russian ghost tankers returned to Kaliningrad not as a symbol of strength, but as a convoy that had been tracked, isolated, and outmaneuvered. The Baltic had become a connected battle space. A single violation no longer led to a polite escort and a quiet warning. It now risked full exposure, from radar data to acoustic signatures to high-resolution video proof. There is one important thing to make clear. Some actions in this scenario have been dramatized to make the story more engaging for viewers. The purpose is to show how modern naval technology, coordination, and information control could shape a tense confrontation at sea. To the men who served on Gearing-class destroyers and Knox-class frigates, and to those who watched the Soviet Navy during years when the world felt only moments away from a wider crisis, this story may feel familiar in spirit. Technology has changed, but the sea still demands discipline, courage, and steady judgment. Today's sailors may use digital displays, satellite feeds, and advanced sensors, but they still have to make difficult decisions in dangerous waters. They still have to hold the line when a 10,000-ton vessel is bearing down and every second matters. Does seeing this level of modern naval chess make you confident that the traditions of the surface fleet and the silent service are still in good hands? Your experience matters. Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. If you believe a strong navy is one of the forces standing between stability and chaos, support this briefing. Share it with others who understand why control of the sea still matters. And comment 1 to salute the sailors of the United States, Sweden, and Finland.